Del Shimasaki couldn't join me because there is a budget conference committee going on right now in education, although it might have just ended. This is a disaster. This is the worst budget I have ever seen, and I've been doing this for 30 or 40 years. I totaled up on slide 3, I totaled up the amount of money that was being proposed by the governor for cuts, and he actually proposed it in 3 separate days, including the one last Friday, and the total was about $950 per student, and if you have a class size of 25, that's about $25,000 per classroom. That's what he's proposing to cut. And unfortunately, a lot of those cuts, if not all, are going to be accepted by the legislature. Page 4 gives a breakdown of those cuts, and this includes the cuts that he proposed on Friday. And you'll see they're in 2 main categories. One is revenue limits, cutting revenue limits in the current year and also in the budget year. And the second category is deferrals. And there's a substantial deferral he's being proposed on top of other deferrals that we've already had of almost $1.7 billion. The total is $5.6 billion. And that's what was proposed in the 3 May revision statements. Last Friday, next slide please. Last Friday, we got another hit it's included in those totals. It was another revenue limit reduction of $680 million. And then we got a surprise, something that we weren't expecting, a 65% cut to home-to-school transportation, and I'll talk a little bit about that. That was not expected. Next slide. The additional revenue limit cut is about $120 per ADA. That's on top of the $245 that had been originally proposed. Remember, this was on Friday. And then the cut to school transportation, that's special education and regular education, is a 65% cut, and it's a cut of $3.4 million to Sacramento. The next page gives a few facts about home-to-school transportation for the Unified District. As you know, you got 2 pieces. You got your regular home-to-school transportation, and you have your special education. When you talk about regular home-to-school transportation, this has to be approved cost by the State Department of Education to transport kids to and from schools. And your state aid is about $1.5 million. That only pays for about 40% of the program. A 65% cut is a cut of $1 million. That's what's being proposed. And special education, the state aid is about $3.6 million. Again, the state only pays for about 40% of the cost of transportation. And the proposed cut is $2.4 million. Total transportation cut that's being proposed is $3.4 million. What's going to happen? They're going to move quickly. They want to finish by June 15th. They are also, when we talked to legislators and staff yesterday, even mentioned the possibility of suspension. Something that I would recommend we be adamantly against, because suspension of Prop 98 means they want to cut you more. Okay? I don't expect that to happen. But the point is they're going to move quickly. I was able to get the first part of the hearing tonight before I came over. They did talk a little bit about transportation. They didn't take an action. But I'm very, very worried that they're going to make this cut. They talked about some flexibility. They talked about increasing some options on reserves that you have in some of the categorical programs, but not a lot of flexibility. They did talk about one thing that I thought was interesting, and that's basic aid districts. These are districts that have so much property tax that they never get cut. They decided that they're going to cut basic aid districts. And that's important because these are revenue limit cuts, and they're usually at a fixed dollar amount. And if you don't, there's about 200,000 kids for basic aid districts. If those districts, usually a lot of them, San Mateo and Marin, are not cut, then our proportion of the cut has to increase. Maybe as much as $20 a child. And I think this is the first time they're going to take that action, and that will help us a teeny bit. And besides, it's equitable, and it's fair, and it's what should be done. They take almost no action today. I don't know when they scheduled the next meeting. I wouldn't be surprised if it's this weekend. Dale's keeping track for us. I wish I had better news, but like I said, this is a disaster. This is the worst year I've ever seen. Your job is incredibly difficult. The cuts you're going to have to make this year are just, you've already made some, are just very, very difficult. I wish I could tell you that the legislature's not going to make these reductions, but I'm afraid they are. We're going to do everything possible to see that they don't make the transportation reduction, and we're going to do everything possible to give you as much flexibility as possible, but they're going to move quickly. So we're over there working as hard as we can.
Okay, thank you. Member Vice President Kennedy.
First, thank you, Mr. Rhoads, for your continued role as the most depressing person to come before us since I've been on the board. On the special education transportation cuts, maybe this is for Mr. Barrington, so 2.4 million proposed cuts to the district, but we're still mandated to provide that transportation. That's correct?
Yes, and so you're going to have to find that 2.4 million from someplace.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
And one of the things that's interesting on the transportation side, it seems that those districts that are impacted the most are urban school districts that have a lot of needy and poor children, and rural school districts that have the same characteristic. We have decreased participation in school busing. We are the last in the nation on the number of kids that we, percentage-wise, that we use the school bus. And the funding has been horrible. But unfortunately, you'll have to transport the special ed kids, and you're going to want to transport your regular kids. And so you're going to have to make cuts otherwise, other places, if these cuts remain.
Member Terry.
Thank you. Can we go back to slide 4? Because I know we talked about it in the interim, but really quickly, can you describe what happened in the last couple of weeks for 08-09, that 114, and what that really means as far as our budgets, considering 08-09 ends in a week?
You're talking about the 114, or you're talking about the 1417?
I'm talking about the adjustments that were made to payroll and expenses that end this month, and how much was taken back from our budget. Maybe, Mr. Barrington, you want to talk about that. But I think it's helpful to remember that.
That is correct. I mean, what's happened, I mean, the worst possible thing to happen for you is to say, you've got to make $1.3 billion reductions. This is a statewide number. School districts, I think it's 244 per child for Sacramento. And we're telling you, you got to make that by the end of the year, and we're telling you that you got to make it in May 14th. Okay. And so that's what they're imposing on you.
So they're retroactively taking back money that they